Welcome to A Celtic State of Mind. I'm Paul John Dykes, and today I'm joined by Kevin Graham. Kevin, welcome back.
Hiya, Paul.
You normally join us on a Monday, but
Yes.
you've come in for match day, so we thought we would do an extra European preview. So this is the ACSOM bulletin. We want to talk about tonight's game with AC Milan. Kevin, you'll remember numerous games against this club when they were maybe viewed more of a European superpower. Where are they these days?
Milan, it's just one of those names. It's a historical name. It's a great name in European football. I remember, I'm just going to go back to the days when I used to go to the Arches, to the pure house nights at the Arches, and I used to wear an AC Milan, a retro AC Milan top.
Did you long sleeves?
Long sleeves, aye.
Was it Kappa or Ineri?
Kappa.
Was it a Kappa?
It was a Kappa one,
Yeah,
aye.
they were they were
very,
vintage
very sought after.
football kits, and you know, if you kept the hold of it, it'd be worth a few bob now.
I haven't kept the hold of it. I don't know actually where it went, but when, like, I'm round about the same age as you, Paul, slightly older, and growing up late 80s, early 90s, you had that great AC Milan side, with your Rijkaard, your Hullet, Baresi.
Don't you just love that thing in football, Kevin? We've spoken about it before. When people are describing a footballer, they call him a Rolls Royce of a player, and when they're talking about footballers, they say your right guards, but there was only one. You know, there was only one right guard, but we say the Dalgliches and the Migraines, but there was only one of them.
There was only one.
That's one of the
right.
football things, isn't it?
Aye.
I remember they brought it up on, remember fantasy football with Skinner and Badil?
Aye, it's a lot of cliches in football, and you find yourself, especially doing stuff like this, you use them.
You do.
Without thinking about it.
Losing the dressing room, we used
Losing the
that
dressing room,
earlier this week.
Stepping up to the plate. There's
I
no
know.
plate in football.
I know.
Why would you step up to a plate? The danger man. And what other line of business do you call somebody the danger man? It's bizarre that we do find ourselves using these cliches all the time.
We do. But don't worry, I'll pick you up for it.
Definitely, I'm sure the viewers will pick us up for it as well. But Milan, a fabulous side. One of my best European away trips was when we played them in the last 16.
Yeah.
And we took them to extra time. And that San Siro, a fantastic stadium. It was a stadium in my youth, watching the first game of Italia 90. Argentina v Cameroon was in the San Siro. And it looks like a big giant spaceship has been plopped in the middle of this waste ground, and it's a leafy suburb of Milan. It was just special. It was a special away trip going to grounds like that. The only other time where I've had that sort of spine tingling moment was going to Anfield. The two stadiums where I've really been more interested in seeing the stadium than actually seeing Celtic. But going there, representing Celtic in a Celtic capacity, was fantastic. And funnily enough, that was where I first met our Hungarian correspondent, Kevin McCluskey, in Milan.
Right.
So there is a story about that, but I'll tell you that off air.
Tell us that another time, Kevin. But you are talking about a Milan that I remember fondly as well, because it was Rijkaard, Hullet, Van Basten. Now, would I be wrong to say Van Basten at that time was the best striker in the world?
Definitely, they had the three best players, and I would say...
Did he retire when he was 31 through injury? Yeah.
He did. Van Basten was the best striker in the world. Hullet, best midfielder in the world, and you could possibly say Rijkaard was maybe up there with Mateus. And look at that back line. I mean, you've got Baresi there as well, a young Maldini at that time. It's just fantastic. George Weah for a period as well, when Weah was a phenomenal player. And it's a club with that sort of history that you want to see back at the top of the game, through merit, not just through name. There's been that European Super League being mentioned again, where teams would just get in it because of their names, but I would rather Milan got back there by merit, just the same way as I would rather Celtic got back there by merit, not because we're Celtic Football Club. I would want to deserve to be there.
Yeah.
Milan are in a wee bit of a state of change. They brought in Stefan Polly last year, and it looked like they were going to get rid of him and bring in Ralph Raniak, him of the Red Bull franchise fame. But Polly's turned him round. They're 20 games unbeaten in all competitions since football returned post-COVID. They're the competition favourites. They seem to have changed tack. I mean, obviously, again, we go back to the golden age of Italian football when it was the best league in the world and all the best players in the world played in Italian football. That's no longer the case. It's now the English Premier League. But Milan have kind of reacted to that, and they seem to be signing young project players. Their top signing in the summer there, who's likely to play the night, is Sandro Tonali, who they signed for £10 million from Brescia, and he's a 20-year-old, and their average age of signings in the summer was 21.
Right.
The average age of their squad's 24. Mm-hmm. And for me, it was no surprise that they're looking at players like Christie, because that seems to be their development model now. They're going to buy highly rated youngsters at prices that most clubs can't afford, and to develop them, probably to sell on to bigger clubs. And AC Milan are one of the biggest clubs in the world, and they're looking to develop youngsters.
See, when you're talking about the best league in the world, again, we opened this up unplanned by talking about football cliches. That sometimes can be a football cliche, Kevin, You know, that's the best league in the world. It's something that's very difficult to quantify. But when we look back on when, Serie A was maybe regarded as such, is it actually the richest? Is it the richest league in the world that is often regarded as the best league in the world?
It's subjective, It's subjective to your opinion, but when I was growing up, Serie A was the best league in the world because it was the richest league in the world. Mm-hmm. And the English Premier League's exactly the same at this precise moment in time. If you look at the Spanish league, La Liga could probably be the best, better, more pleasing games in La Liga. The Bundesliga is fantastic as well, but they won't get the title of the best league in the world because it's not the richest league in the world. It's a bit like the Champions League, getting the title of the best competition in the world. No, it's the richest competition in the world.
Yeah.
It's the rich teams that are in that competition. I find really interesting about the night that basically UEFA have called this the game of the week. Celtic v AC Milan as UEFA's game of the game of this Europa League round. That shows you the historical weight of both names. Mm-hmm. For me, more on where the teams are. And we've had people writing this game off, but we can't write this game off. And it goes back to me and you were talking off air about we had a really, really bad result on Saturday. That goes without saying. But we can't let ourselves get detached from European competition.
No.
Because we don't know what's going to happen in the future. And I spoke about getting to places on merit. And to get to places on merit, we've got to turn up and at least give AC Milan a game of football tonight. It was really interesting. Stephen McGowan says on another podcast that Celtic's obsession over 10 in a row has made them a very small club. And that's been in my head for the last couple of days when I've looked at some fellow supporters' comments saying that they'll write this game off. And
that's interesting.
Are we looking at this wrongly? Have we become a small club? Have we, maybe not a small club, but have we now got a small club mentality where we're completely blinded by this magical 10 and it's to the detriment to the longer term future of the club?
It's a difficult one because you and I have met Stephen in the past, Kevin, and I like him. I like a lot of what he writes. I've not heard the podcast, so it's hard to know, in what context he was saying that, if that's just, one quote lifted from it. But you could probably take what you've just said there from it, Kevin, and say, well, if you're so focused, stroke obsessed with winning 10 in a row, does all your eggs go in that basket to the detriment of your European performances? Has that happened to Celtic in the last few seasons? 100%, yes, it has. Have we signed players for domestic success or to push on in Europe? I would say for domestic success. The signing policy in terms of bringing players on, developing them and selling them on for a profit, is that to continue domestic success? Well, we don't really need to do that to that extent to win the league. Up until this season, We haven't had to do that to win the league. The level of investment hasn't had to be to the point where you're signing players for tens of millions of pounds to win the domestic league. If you wanted to move on in Europe, then that would be different. You would need to buy a higher calibre of player at a certain point. Now, you're talking there about, you know, the model of Milan bringing in players at a certain age, Kevin. Is that because they have a model where they want to sell them on, or are they building a team where they might be a European force again? What is their kind of thinking behind that?
I think for Milan to be a European force again, or even to challenge your Juves and the Napolis and Inter Milans, they have to get into the Champions League. So for me, their aim this season will be to get into the Champions League. And whether that's finishing fourth in Serie A or winning this competition, that will be their aim, is to get a Champions League spot at the end of this season. And I think they're maybe looking to build a squad over the next couple of years, which will grow into a top European side. But they're top of Serie A just now. Do I think will they win Serie A? No, they won't. But if they manage to finish fourth and get a Champions League spot, it will be a very, very good season for them. I mean, they're current favourites for this competition. So we're not playing any mugs, and I know that they haven't got any household names apart from Zlatan up front and Donnarumma, the goalie. They are a decent, well-organised side with a very good manager. And they've got, seemingly for the first time in a while in Milan, and I'm saying this as an outsider with a passing interest in Italian football, we've had some AC Milan fans actually on the comments over the last couple of days as well, so they'll maybe keep me right in this. But they seem to have a aim, a project and a plan. And for me, they want to get back to the top table of European football, and they'll use... And for that, they need Champions League football. So they'll get it one way or another this season, I reckon.
Is that what the comments perhaps that Stephen made was around? So you're looking at Milan, right? So what's the objective? We want to be at the top table of European football. We want to be competing for European trophies. How do we do that? Well, finish top four in the league. Celtic, what's your objective? Winning 10 in a row. So the thing is as well, we have had some very interesting insights into that. I mean, the commercial aspect of 10 in a row, because a massive proportion of the fans are of that mindset anyway, Kevin. It's huge. It's huge. You know, the commercial element of winning 10 in a row is massive. And as Stevie said earlier on today, the failure to win that would be almost critical in terms of a marketing aspect.
That was a really interesting point, and a point that I'd never thought about. That winning this league is probably worth far more money than getting to our usual last 32, the Europa League. I mean, let's not beat about the bush here. This is a tough group that we're in tonight. We've got Sparta Prague, who are top of the Czech division. We've got Lille, who are flying in League One, and we've got AC Milan, who are currently top of Serie A. This is for us to reach what seems to be our ceiling, the last 32 of the Europa League. We've got to pull something magnificent out the bag to finish second in this group, or even to win this group.
Now, as we've spoken about many, many times on this podcast, you know, the history of Celtic Football Club is intertwined with success in Europe. It wasn't a one-off in 1967. There was a period during the 60s and 70s, Kevin, where Celtic, you know, progressed to the quarterfinals regularly of European competition. And normally in the European Cup, you know, there were some runs in the Cup Winners' Cup, etc., that we're all aware of. So there's been a lot of chat, you know, this week, and again, it goes back to the point that you were making there in terms of the be-all and end-all, the reason for being 10 in a row. A lot of Celtic fans are saying they're not interested in tonight's game. I find that a little surprising.
I do, but I understand it to a point. On the lead up to the game on Saturday, I commented quite a few times that I was feeling really detached from the build-up to a Celtic Rangers game. And it was the first time where I felt like this doesn't feel right. This doesn't feel right. And sitting here doesn't feel right. It feels like I should be on my way to Celtic Park. And Celtic Park on Saturday looked just what it is without fans in it. a big breeze block, plastic, empty stadium. And the game became virtually a training game because there's no emotion there. And for us, you look at all the big victories that we've had in Europe over the last 20 years, every one of them has had the fans playing a major part. And to take that away from us, we seem quite an emotionless team. We can't seem to react. There doesn't seem to be that fire within us. And I can see why fans are maybe feeling a bit detached from tonight's game. Obviously, the result on Saturday's got a part to play in that. But imagine if this was normal circumstances. Everybody would have been selling their granny for a ticket for this game. This would have been sold out. It would have made Celtic an absolute fortune. We would be talking about those special nights in Celtic Park. But what is it going to be? It's going to be an empty stadium. It's going to be a fraction of what it should be. You even look at the stadium. This is something that started to annoy me as well. You look at that. You look at that stadium, and where other clubs have left reminders of the fans, club banners, fans banners, Celtic have just put in the bottom tier as just sponsorships for their betting company, for their sponsors. It's almost as if they forgot we exist. It's almost as if when the players walk out on that pitch, they don't know that we're there. If you look at other clubs, they have banners saying, we're behind you, we're this, we're that. When they players just go out there, it just seems to be coming like it's just 22 guys kicking a ball about. There's no emotion. And I feel that Celtic, under Neil Lennon, have been especially better when there's been some emotion in the game, where there's been a bit of soul in the game. And I think we're struggling, and we may struggle tonight because the atmosphere is going to be dead.
It is going to be dead. It's not the first time that Celtic have played a European game in front of no fans. The older element of the support may remember back to the 80s when that happened, as well as punishment for the previous season's indiscretions against Rapid Vienna. Kevin, I don't know, you'll probably remember that yourself, having gone to the games back then. The only way you could get in is if you got a job as a steward. And there is a few Celtic fans who we're aware of who did that just so they could watch the game. But I think Celtic, even back then, and I'm going back many, many years, were affected by the lack of a crowd on a European game at Celtic Park. And I think it will play a part tonight. But the players need to rise above that, Kevin, particularly after the disappointment of Saturday. Now, I've not spoken to you about it in person since Saturday. We're not going to labour the fact, but we're going to do it with one eye on tonight's game. What does Lenny have to do differently? I've actually posed the question, who plays fullback in a back four? Should we line up in that way? I don't see us going out with the three centre-halves tonight.
I don't, but what I really want to see, I want to see us have a reaction. I want to see us take ownership, and I want to see us have passion and leadership. And if I get all of that, I'll be quite happy.
So you're looking for a performance over the result tonight?
I'm looking for an absolute performance. Football isn't played on a spreadsheet. It isn't played with systems. I've never sung a song about a system. I've never sung a song about 4-4-2. I've sung songs and wrote stuff about players who have played the game. And I'm looking for the players to step up. I'm not really bored about... I didn't look at football, and I know I'm going to get shouted down as a dinosaur, maybe a football romantic point of view, but I reckon players make teams, players make games, and if they're on it, they're on it. And that's what I want to see tonight for Celtic. Look, we might not be good enough tonight. It might not happen. But if we go out there and make sure that AC Milan see that they're in a game, make them work for their 3 points, make them work for whatever they're going to get tonight, even hopefully beat them, then I'll go away more than happy that we've shown some of the spirit. I think Celtic is an emotional club, and I think we're suffering more at the fact that we're not there. And I was thinking about the whole... I haven't answered your question yet, but I will get round to answering your question. I was thinking about this at the weekend when the splits, and you had Russell and Anthony in here on Monday, and they were fantastic, intelligent guests, and you had Lawrence in as well. Two sets of guests have two completely different views. And I was thinking to myself, when did this split in the Celtic support happen? Because under Brendan, it was the Holy Trinity, and we've spoken about the Holy Trinity before. And I went back and listened to the podcast we recorded after we won the treble. And I says at that point, and you disagreed with me here, I says the way that they appointed Neil Lennon felt like the beginning of the end, rather than the start of a new beginning. And I still believe that. I still believe that was a point that the support fractured. That was a point that we weren't all on the same page. And you can maybe take that back to when Brendan left. Maybe it's Brendan. Maybe Brendan leaving was the beginning of the end. But Neil Lennon's there, and I'm not going to change my opinion. And my opinion was, I didn't think he was the right choice longer term after Brendan Rodgers. I just think it was maybe seen as too much of a downgrade from where we are, and I'm not going to change that opinion. But tonight he's in our dugout. Tonight he's got to come out, and we've said it a number of times. He's got to get that fire and passion in that team, because we're not there. We're not there to actually show that team support. He's got to basically redeem himself. And the team have got to redeem themselves. And we often say that Neil Lennon is at his best when his back's against the wall.
We have said that a number of times,
and it was interesting, I heard Anthony Haggerty yesterday, and he says that they gave, in the last 20 years, they gave two managers carte blanche to do what they want, Martin O'Neill and Brendan Rodgers. And when we've appointed Lennon, have we went back the way? And maybe this is where Stephen McGowan's coming. We've became, our obsession with 10 means that we became a very small club. Tonight, I got there eventually. Tonight, I would play Barkas, Ayer at right back, Duffy, Welsh, Taylor, Frimpong on the right hand side of midfield, Christie, McGregor, Brown, Laxalt is the left hand side of midfield, and I would play Kamala up front. I would play a 4-5-1.
Right. Couple of queries on that, just so that it's all clear to everybody listening in, because that is your predicted 11, yeah?
That is my predicted 11.
Brilliant. It came from the brain and the mind of Kevin Graham.
Came off my warped imagination.
Yes, well, there is a wee bit of imagination in there, but I think you need that from time to time, Kevin. Earlier on today, Stephen Mullen had Anthony Ralston playing at right back. Right back seems to be a slight issue tonight. You're playing Ayer at right back, out of position as it happens. And yes, I know he's filled in at right back before, and you're keeping Welsh in. Now, as I said, we're focusing on AC Milan, but as part of that, we will look back, because you're picking a team based perhaps largely on the performance on Saturday. Welsh has done enough to stay in the team. How impressed were you with him on Saturday?
He was fine. He handled it well. I liked his attitude, and I know that's a minimum a professional football player should give, but I liked he didn't seem fazed with the game at all. He was one of the Celtic players that had so many touches, it was unbelievable for one of your back three. He stood up to the task well, possibly better than some of the more experienced players there. All the focus was on him, and the young man went through it he went through it fine. He did go through it fine. And for that, look, I'm maybe looking at the bigger picture here. I'm maybe having a look at, well, maybe we have got a centre half on him. Maybe we won't need to sign another centre half. Maybe we have got a young Scottish centre half there that can do a trick for us, can do a turn for us. Maybe he is one for the future. Maybe he is going to be there for the next 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years. So if he's the only other fit centre half that we've got as well. So that's the reason why I would keep on the team. There's probably a bit of fairy tale romance about Celtic like that I would want to see. So that's why I've kept Welsh in. And
sometimes it can be the making of a player, you know, when you think back to John Kennedy against Barca.
David Marshall. Sometimes when you don't give players time to think about it, you're going in, you're playing. I trust you. the man management of that. You look at the man management of Martin O'Neill with Kennedy, with Marshall. Fantastic, and I think Lennon has got that in him. Let's not be about the bush here about Neil Lennon. Neil Lennon's a man manager. Neil Lennon's a motivator. He's never deemed to me to be a tactician. That's just one thing, and I could be completely wrong with that looking in from the outset. But the reason I would put Ayer at right back as well with two, and the reason I would play Ayer and Taylor and Frimpong and Laxalt is because of the danger AC Milan possess down the wide areas, and putting these four on the wings means you can double up on what they're going to attack down that side.
Right. Now, again, I think anyone listening in might be looking at Welsh as a surprise inclusion. I think if it was based solely on his performance, then you wouldn't drop him. But I think the change in shape and trying to play everybody in position would ensure that Ayer will be playing alongside Duffy in the centre half. That's the team I've picked anyway, Kevin. Stevie Mullen earlier on is playing Ralston at right back. Don't know how that would go down, probably like a lead balloon, but he does have European experience. He does have a lot of senior games under his belt. Who are the other right backs? Well, Frimpong's a right back. Believe it or not, I don't rate him as a right back, but he's a right back. That's his natural position. He seems far more effective going forward. Is it a risk to play him there? There's another thing that Neil Lennon needs to contemplate. And the other one that I think some people might be surprised at is Klimala up front. Now, you're just picking your most fit striker for that position, Kev?
I'm picking my most... There's probably an element of that, but there's also an element that I haven't seen enough of Ayeti to see if he can play that lone striker role. We're going to need to get out tonight. We're going to need to get somebody that will drag us up the park, because I do think AC Milan will have quite a bit of the ball. And the reason that I'm playing Frimpong and Laxalt as midfielders is because they seem to have the pace to support. If we need to break, they can break.
What's your formation? Sorry, Kevin.
It's a 4-5-1.
4-5-1, right.
It is a 4-5-1. So you've got the extra energy of Christie in there, and you've got the energy from the wings, Frimpong and Laxalt. Kamala as well, I reckon, if we tell him, we just want you to drag us up the park. There's going to be a number of long balls. We want you to drag us up the park. Get the ball, turn and run.
So if that was the game plan on Saturday, for example, and Klimala, I'm going to say, didn't do that, a lot of that was down to the fact that the rest of the team didn't allow him to. However, would it surprise you if we don't play a striker and we play Christie up top and we bring in Turnbull? Would that surprise you? Looking at the team selection this season, Kevin?
No, for what we've seen this season, not at all. But I would think that would be wrong. I think we need Christie's energy in the middle of the park, and also for a counter-attack and breaking creative point of view. I think we need Christie in his right role, rather than floating about up top trying to drag us up the park when it's not his game. Well,
I mentioned my team earlier on, but just in case you didn't tune in, I've got Barkas in goals. I'm playing with Ayer and Duffy, centre half, also four at the back, Kevin. Left back, Taylor comes back in, but I'd play with Frimpong at right back because it is his recognised position, regardless of whether or not I think he's a better right wing back. And then my five midfielders, or the 2-3, would be Brown and McGregor, and in front of them Turnbull, Christie and Laxalt, with Griffiths up front as a lone striker. It comes to the point, I think, Kevin, when will Lee Griffiths be ready to start a game?
I know, and Russell made the great point when he's talking about how long does it take players to get fit, and you've got to take the management. You've got to take the management at face value, because there's nothing else we can do. We can all make judgments about what's happening behind the scenes or what we perceive to happen, but the only people who will make the decisions are the guys that have got evidence to make those decisions. So we can sit here all we want and say, how long does it take guys to get fit? It's an interesting point that Welsh and Laxalt walked into that team, and they've never been near a football for months. They've never been near a game for months, and they looked fit enough to me and you. They looked fit enough to my untrained eye. So you've got to say there is maybe something more, but based on this season, I would go with Kamala up front. I don't think Ayeti will be fully fit. I mean, it's a hamstring injury. It could go at any point again. I think we need to maybe wrap him in kid gloves for challenges that are to come.
I.e. Sunday.
We've got a massive game on Sunday as well. So that's why I wouldn't be surprised to see Kamala. I also wouldn't be surprised to see Christie up front, but I do think seeing Christie up front would be an error. Would be an absolute.
So they are, but it wouldn't surprise me.
It wouldn't surprise me. No, it wouldn't surprise me whatsoever. But you're virtually playing the 4-6-0 again, and hoping to get up to support.
I agree with you with Christie. I think it was the biggest loss, even bigger than Edouard on Saturday. For me, the loss of Christie was that big for Celtic.
It's his energy in closing down. Christie seems to operate the press. Well, when that high press, we didn't press at all.
But he brings in. You think back to the 2 European performances, Kevin, against Riga and Sarajevo. Primarily, the delivery out to the distribution out to Frimpong was coming from Ryan Christie.
Yes.
And then similarly, on the left-hand side, releasing Taylor was Ryan Christie. That's what he was doing. He was linking up and he was giving Celtic a bit of width. I seen none of that on Saturday, none whatsoever. I felt that El Yunusi and Cham were complete passengers. And, Frimpong had the worst game I've seen him playing in a Celtic jersey. And I don't think for a minute the game plan was for him not to run at that Rangers defence. I don't know why he didn't do it. People have said he was doubled up on. It's never stopped him in the past. He's been doubled up on all season. And that includes in the European games. His instinct is to take a man on. Why didn't he do it? I want to see a lot more of that tonight. I think that Luxalt also has that in him, looking at footage from his previous club and also Uruguay now. It's interesting that we're talking about Laxalt because you kind of hope he is going to be a bit of a hidden weapon, maybe knowing the team, it's his parent club. You've been talking about some of your memories, AC Milan, some of your fond memories and kits and players and teams, etc. We've had a few players. We've obviously got one just now in Laxalt who played with AC Milan. Paolo Di Canio, anyone? Massimo Donati? Has there been any others? Have a wee think about that. But I know that Milan have already stated an interest in Chris Ayer. Maldini's confirmed that. And just in the last few days have spoken of their admiration for Callum McGregor. When players are going into games like this, because we live in a cutthroat industry when it comes to football, is that on players' minds like Ayer who might be looking for a move sometime soon?
I would hope so. Hope it is on his mind, and he goes out and has an absolute blinder for us. I really. Let's. Stevie says something earlier on about if you give football players an inch, they take a mile, and it's also the same when they feel that they've got a chance to put themselves in the shop window. Christopher Ayer has came to Celtic to progress his career. He doesn't see Celtic anything more than a stepping stone. He'll enjoy his time at the club, he'll love his time at the club, but there will be a point that he'll come to look on, he'll come to move on. And he'll know that scouts are not going to be watching him against Hamilton at New Douglas Park. He'll know that scouts are not going to be watching him on Sunday even against Aberdeen at Pittodrie. They're going to be watching him tonight. They're going to be watching him in the big games. And I thought he was okay against Rangers. I thought if you were a scout watching that Rangers game on Saturday, you would have came away raving about Barisic, Tavernier and Kamara and Ayer. They were the 4 players you would have been, if I was writing a scouting report, they would have been the 4 players that would have stuck out for us. So you're looking at tonight and I'm going, well, if there's a bit of self-service for Christopher Ayer to go out and have a blinder and benefits us, I'm all for it. Yep. I've got no problem with that whatsoever.
Now, when you're looking at these previous players, obviously, who's played, I'm sure there was no young goalkeeper that we signed. Did Milan Missoun no come from? He was now a goalie, of course, but did he no come from Milan? Milan Missoun, remember him? Somebody online will be able to tell us. I'm just thinking of links between AC Milan and Celtic. But I think when we go into the game tonight, we've mentioned Sunday, Kevin. Is Lenny picking his team? Is he going to be very much like some of the fans that have said this week about 10 in a row? Is he picking his team tonight with one eye on Aberdeen, or is he doing what I've been suggesting, in that you're preparing for Aberdeen by getting a good performance tonight, getting a bit of momentum and getting the confidence back in the legs?
I'm going to have a look at Lenny's mentor, which was Martin O'Neill. Martin O'Neill, even when he came into Celtic and we were that far behind Rangers that time, Martin O'Neill came in and he kept on talking about Europe. Neil Lennon has possibly got the greatest Celtic victory in Europe in the last 20 years when we beat Barcelona. That fabulous Barcelona team at home. He knows the merit of European football to Celtic. He knows that we can only attract players of a certain calibre if we do well in Europe. And I don't think he'll have a mind on Aberdeen. I think he'll have a mind on this game. And he'll be looking for a reaction in this game from his players. And he won't be giving anybody a night off with Sunday on mind. Because his players let him down. The players let the fans down. And he maybe let himself down on Saturday as well. So he'll be looking to make amends tonight. And I only wish that we were there. It feels like somebody's actually tore off my right arm. That we're no there, and football is beginning to feel like that there's something really missing now.
Oh,
and I've always been in the opinion, Paul, I've sat in here many times that football shouldn't have started before fans were allowed in. And you see games in the Champions League over the last couple of nights where there's fans there. There was fans in Kiev, there was fans in other games, there was fans in France. And even just having that slight crowd noise, natural crowd noise, that natural passion, it was great to watch again. Mm-hmm. Even if it was, especially Kiev Stadium holds numerous thousands and there was only maybe 10,000 in it. That noise that those fans created, the ultras created, we're missing that. We're definitely missing that. We're part of the football club, and that we're no there is sad. It's really, really sad.
It certainly is. Now, again, as I said before, Saturday, hugely disappointing. We've done a lot of talking about it. And as of tonight, we'll be talking about this game because obviously we move on very quickly when you're talking about Celtic. But before we do that and before we look at the comments coming through on YouTube, Facebook and Twitter, Kevin, let's talk a wee bit about Neil Lennon. I was saying earlier on, without any inside information, without any of this in the know that a lot of people claim to have, that there seems to be a scenario where Lennon is not getting the best out of certain players. And this season, particularly Edouard, I think it's safe to say, Encham, Julien's injured at the moment. And, you know, I pitched the view that perhaps these players who view themselves as eventually becoming elite players or have come from elite backgrounds or elite setups, and people may scoff at Julien, but he won the World Cup at under 20 level, so he's been involved in the France underaged level very successfully, which I think if you win the World Cup, that's elite for me. Man City academies or PSG academies in the case of Encham and Edouard. And you come along to Celtic, who we aim to be an elite club, and I think anybody of a Celtic state of mind, that would be the main ambition. But the change in culture around the club from Brendan Rodgers to Neil Lennon may not suit that type of player. Do you think that is an issue at the moment, and do you think Neil Lennon can overcome it?
We can only speculate, and I hear it says quite often that we don't get coached. The coaching's bad. We don't get set up well, which I find difficult to believe in this day and age. I really do. Well, let's not be let's be truthful. That Rangers look a far better team than us at this precise moment in time because they've been playing that way for 2 years. They know their jobs inside out. They are a better side, a better team than us. They maybe haven't got a better squad, but at the moment their first 11 is functioning as a better team than what we are. We seem to be a bit like a vinyl record that's got beer spilt on it. Sometimes we get a tune, then it jumps onto the next record, then it jumps onto the next bit. And we just seem to be all over the shop. There seems to be a bit of doubt of what we're trying to achieve, of what we're trying to do, of what our identity is. And our identity last season under Lennon was we get the ball forward and we score goals. We get the ball in the box quick. And maybe this is one of the reasons why I'm playing Frimpong and Laxalt and Kamala tonight. I'll be just telling Kamala, when the ball goes out to Laxalt, did you see the number of first-time balls he put into the box on Saturday?
Laxalt? But who's on the end of him?
I'll be telling Kamala, as soon as he gets the ball, you get in the box. Just head for that box.
Is that down to his own game management on Saturday, though, Kevin?
I don't know. We really don't know. We haven't seen enough of him, to actually say, was he told to do that, or was that just his style of play, that I get the ball here and I put it into the box? Because that's what I've been taught to do at AC Milan. I get the ball in early into the box.
Something Taylor doesn't do. Taylor is ponderous. He puts his foot in the ball, he passes sideways, he passes back the way. I've picked him in my starting 11 tonight, but it certainly isn't a feature of his play.
Whoever is up top for Celtic, I would hope they get the instruction, stand on the last man and we're just going to knock it in early. Just make sure that you're ready to run the channels. When the two wide players head into the box, because that ball's gone into the box. And if we get decent deliveries into the box, we want you on the end of it. That's what I'm looking for the strikers. Get us up out the park and actually attack cross balls into the box. It depends. Going back to your point, it actually does depend on what these players see as development. Right, we all know that Brendan pulled Celtic up to elite level. Has that been gradually getting eroded by the changes with Damien Duff leaving, Gavin Stratton coming in, John Kennedy being there, Lennon's just maybe getting his own, making his own stamp on things. But then I go back to the conversation that we had that night that Lennon was appointed interim manager and we bet Hearts 2-1 at Tynecastle. We both says he can come in as long as he doesn't change anything. Leave what Brendan left there, because the club is operating at a higher level than since the club is operating at a level not seen since Martin O'Neill was there.
So has Neil Lennon failed to adapt to that? Has he failed to adapt his style to what was already in place? Maybe
he's found it a bit uncomfortable.
Because last season we wouldn't be having this conversation. He won 53 points out of 58 after the December game, the defeat against Rangers. So it's only now that we're having this conversation. What's changed this season?
Maybe what's changed is the players have seen. We were in lockdown for 4 months. The seasons have been curtailed. These young laddies have been sitting in their houses locked down going, I quite fancy a change now, and it's not happened. Have they been promised things? Have they been... Their agents have maybe promised them things that haven't came to fruition? Are they bored? They've won everything they can in Scotland. What does 10 mean to these guys? And I'm talking even about the Scottish players as well.
It should mean something to domestic players.
But they all go away on international duty and they speak to Ryan Christie, is great pals with Stuart Armstrong. Stuart Armstrong sitting down in Southampton, earning 4 or 5 times the money, maybe, that Ryan Christie's on. Proving his sell down at Southampton. That's the level that Ryan Christie's going to go to.
And Tierney.
And Tierney as well. They're sitting there playing their PS4s, socially distanced for each other, in a hotel lounge or a hotel room. So they all talk. And you look at Kieran Tierney, the biggest Celtic fan in that team, was still willing to go, well, I've won everything, I've done everything I can do up here. And there's also a pressure. Do you want to be... I've said before, failure won't reflect well on anybody this season. History won't be kind to them.
No.
And are these players looking at it going, I would rather get out when I can. I'd rather get out as a winner than take the risk, take the chance that we may fail this season.
I think it comes down to the individual and their motivation, Kevin, but when you're looking at such a monumental success as 10 in a row, that decade of dominance, and I would expect, if and when that title is won, for massive changes in the outlook of the club to take place. But what we'll do is we'll have a look at some of the comments coming in on Facebook, Twitter and also on YouTube. And if you are watching on YouTube, make sure that you do subscribe to the channel. We are going out live on a daily basis. This is our second broadcast of the day. Kevin mentioned earlier that Celtic are putting advertising on their seats. Well, we've got a big advert across the top of the screen as well for FansBet. And if you want to get some fan boosts, which are specifically designed for our listeners, then they will be on our Twitter page after this particular bulletin. Now, follow our Celtic on Twitter. Afternoon again. Welcome back. Going for a 3-2 tonight. Hope Frimpong got Walsh or Ralston behind him. He can attack. Ralston, when the names Ralston and Welsh were mentioned on Friday, there was a bit of a guffaw. You could almost hear it was palpable. To such a point, I was so confident, Kevin, that Welsh wasn't going to be playing, and it was no disrespect to the young guy. I just didn't think. I thought that Lennon would change the shape before he would throw in a player like Welsh. I've not picked Ralston, but I would much rather someone was in their position. Would it be a massive surprise? I've already asked you. Would it be a massive surprise if Christie started? What about Ralston? Has he started a game for Lennon? I think I remember seeing him last season on at least one occasion. Has he started a game for Neil Lennon?
Well, the last time I can remember Ralston playing for us was a midweek game. I think it was just before Rodgers left, and he scored. I think he scored against St Johnstone. I think that's the last game I can remember. It was one of the games after the winter break. That's the last game I can remember him featuring for Celtic. Obviously, he went to St Johnstone on loan for Neil Lennon's first season. So I would very much doubt that he's actually started a game under Neil Lennon. Would it be a surprise? It would be a massive surprise because he's been to Dundee United on loan, been to St Johnstone on loan, and never set the heather on fire at both those clubs.
Played a lot of games at St Johnstone.
He played a lot of games at St Johnstone, and I'm fortunate enough to know a St Johnstone season ticket holder, or unfortunate enough.
Or he's unfortunate enough to have it.
He's a good lad, Fraser. He is a good lad. And he says that Anthony Ralston would be a good player for St Johnstone, but not for us. That was his honest take on Anthony Ralston. And I'm going to say that Fraser has seen Anthony Ralston more often than what I've seen him, because he did go and watch St Johnstone home and away.
Yep.
So I'm going to take his word of it, and I've got to say that was probably the coaching staff's take on it, a knowledgeable take on it as well. Welsh hasn't obviously went to Morton on loan last year as well, and
played some games at right back.
He played some games at right back as well. But I think Ralston's further down the road in Welsh. I'm no 100%. I wouldn't like to comment on the ages with him, but Ralston's had far more competitive man's football than what Welsh has got. And those with the knowledge in football have got more facts, figures, and know-how to make a decision on Anthony Ralston and what they have gone on Stephen Welsh. If that makes sense.
Yeah, again,
they've got more evidence.
We're normally talking, Kevin. We're normally talking about players who are getting picked for big European games because we've not worked fast enough in the transfer market. And in the past, we've seen players getting starts like Sadie Yanko and O'Connell, and of course, Stafford mentioned Ralston playing against PSG and that infamous picture of him with Neymar, which I don't think's aged that well, to be honest with you. But this time round, it's due to illness mainly, isn't it? That we're scratching about trying to figure out who's going to play right back. Frimpong came in as a right back. He's shown himself as being a much better wing back. However, it's another option. We're hearing through the social media channels that the team's been leaked again. It all depends. I mean, I said this last at the beginning of the week, and I'll say it again with regards to team leaks. I get them virtually every single game, Kevin. I get them through WhatsApp virtually every game. A lot of the time you forward me them. I know that you're not up at Lennox Town. But what I wouldn't do is two things. I don't forward them on anywhere, and I certainly wouldn't read them out as gospel on this podcast, because I don't know what the team line is. If I know, don't you be checking your phone, by the way.
I'm just checking my phone.
Don't be giving me the team. And if I did know the team, I wouldn't announce it either, because, you know, there's a real issue at the moment around that at Celtic. And if it has been leaked again tonight, then that's a massive concern. It already is a concern. But a few people are coming in. There's one coming in from Facebook, Paul Team Leak, and we've also got Ryan Bias coming in from YouTube, team being leaked again. Well, who knows until the team's announced, you know, because team lines are circulated all the time, Kevin, aren't they? And I'll tell you what, if Carmella's playing up front, I'm going to start pointing the finger at you.
Well, I haven't got it. So if it has been leaked, it hasn't appeared on my CSC WhatsApp yet by the two guys who always put it on the CSC WhatsApp, and I'm no naming them, but they ken who they are.
That's good.
And they will be watching this.
Now, Jerry Mesh, Kevin has brought up the fact that there was, I mean, this is the thing, right? You put your neck on the chopping block if you're doing a daily broadcast, Kevin, and back in the day when Neil Lennon was appointed interim manager or permanent manager, we would have given our views, and they're out there. We don't delete them if they're wrong, they're out there. And obviously, you could look back and say, well, I stand by that, or I've changed my mind. You're allowed to change your mind, aren't you? Definitely. Well, Jerry Mesh comes in to say, welcome to the show, Jerry. In the car park after the Hearts final was like a morgue when it was announced that Lennon was given the job full time. So your guest is on the money. It ruined what was a night of celebration. You know, when Brendan Rodgers left the club, a certain individual was required to take over the job at that point, Kevin. And I've mentioned it. And again, these are terms sometimes that you can't quantify. We needed a togetherness because of the nature in which Brendan left the club. We needed someone to galvanise the team, to bring it all together. And I think at that time, when he came in on an interim basis, that he was, at that point, the right man to the end of the season. And I said that at the time, and I totally thought that, and I believe that to this day. But I also said that should he wrap up the treble, it'll be very difficult for Celtic not to give him the job. So do you think at the interim basis there was an agreement of sorts? If I get this treble, the job's mine. You would think that's the way football works.
Yes, and as I said...
And last season we weren't complaining.
We weren't complaining last season, no. But I think we knew... And we says it at the time, Paul, and people can go back and listen to what we says at the time. We both says, as an interim, we wouldn't want a better person. There wasn't. He was the best guy to come in and get us over that line towards the end of that season. That cup final, when he stood in front of me with that Scottish Cup at the corner flag, I was saying goodbye to him because I didn't expect him to get the job full time. By the time I had got back to the coach, the bus, he had got the job full time.
I heard he got the job, then I'd seen a parking ticket in my windscreen, and I was more upset with the parking ticket. And
I'll show you the split on the supporters bus. All the young team were distraught,
right?
And all the Celtic dads were going, well, it could work. He's just won a treble.
This distraught reaction, though, Kevin, is that because we had raised the bar with Brendan Rodgers to that elite level of manager?
Looking back in hindsight, yes. That was the reason. We saw what an elite manager could do, and it seemed to be that we were going back over old water. We were going backwards by appointing Neil Lennon. Rightly or wrongly, everybody can have a look at that view. That it just seemed to be, and even the way, and I've said this plenty of times on this podcast, he didn't deserve the way that he was appointed. The whole, we got him at the shower and we tell him that he was going to be appointed.
Was he having a shower?
Aye.
Was Peter Lowell having a shower?
Who knows?
These questions have never been asked.
It just seemed to be it was a...
Why would the manager have a shower?
It was pouring rain. It was probably wet, cold. I'm making excuses why Neil Lennon was having a shower there. I don't know why he was having a shower. He was getting his suit on to go out for a night out.
Right.
Because at those points we could still go in night suit.
Yeah, you know. It seems like a long time ago.
Remember, we could go in the night suit. So the whole...
I actually thought, sorry, before we move on, the reason I'm asking that, I just thought he maybe pulled him into a quiet area of the changing room, which was the shower, which wasn't on to offer.
Whatever it was, it seemed farcical that a major football club would appoint their manager.
Did it even happen, Kevin?
Who knows?
You know, it seemed to me like almost a throwaway comment that everybody dived on to discredit the appointment.
You look at the names that we were linked with, though. Villas-Boas, Benitez. There was numerous other...
Benitez has spoken about that interest, hasn't
He did. He has spoken about. He's not having a very good time in China either. And the club never denied. The club never came out and says, by the way, if Neil does what we want him to do, then he is going to get the job permanently. The fact that he wasn't allowed to bring in his own staff probably should have set alarm bells ringing at that point.
With fans or with Neil Lennon?
With fans and with Neil.
But he would have known that before.
He would have known that.
You know, the job would have been offered on that basis.
The club went from a manager who had full control to all of a sudden the CEO, the major shareholders. Let's not like take anything away from it. Dermot Desmond is anything but an absentee landlord. He is anything that he says goes, and he likes Neil. He's came out and says that in numerous interviews that he likes Neil, but he can be quite ruthless as well. And I think the way that he cut ties with Brendan Rodgers after he left shows that Rodgers is not going to be on his Christmas card list after that. So it's very difficult because Neil Lennon will always be a Celtic legend. He will always be a Celtic legend, but for those of us who remember Neil's first time there, there's no surprise that we've had performances that we've had. My biggest surprise is the coaching staff left there have allowed these type of performances to creep back in. But there would be no surprise that he's led us to. There is no surprise that he's led us to success, and there is no surprise where we are completely doubting him at this point. This was always in the post with the. You just have to have a look at Neil Lennon's history as a Celtic manager, the Hibs manager, Bolton manager.
I think
this point was always going to happen.
Bolton was a wee bit of an anomaly because people do use that to, hit him over the back way. I mean, I think he would probably be the first to admit that the due diligence should have been done on that job before he went down. That was a basket case of a club.
Then let's look at this. He beat Barcelona, and for the following month, he was never off Sky Sports. Him and Johan Mialbi were never off Sky Sports. And we all slagged Brendan about promoting their brand. Him and Mialbi were looking for a way out at that point. They thought that their meal ticket was beating Barcelona. They were getting a Premiership job that summer, and it never happened. And he lost interest. And I don't, maybe that my take on it is he lost interest in Celtic the following season when that job didn't come along.
One thing I would say, because Rodgers' name has re-emerged in a lot of conversations this week, but let's not forget that it wasn't all sweetness and light under Brendan Rodgers.
Not.
I mean, the European performances were often despicably poor. The signing record of Brendan Rodgers at Celtic, if you were to go for a hit and miss, was more misses than hits. When you look at the behaviour of Rodgers in engineering his move out of the club and publicly criticising those that employed him, in this infamous Terminado interview and throwing the toys at the pram when he couldn't push his transfer budget up to the level of Timothy Castagne when there was already a transfer budget in place, or being presented with players from the scouting team and not even looking at them, Kevin, that were within his budget. The Boyata situation, the boy basically went on strike. Dembele situation, engineering a move to China. So, we had a really good Invincible season, but we can't just, paper over the cracks there. No. Lenny came in, and at that time we needed Neil Lennon. And he answered the call, and he done brilliantly well to wrap up the treble. I think the discredit in nature, they probably regret saying that he's just been offered it in the changing room, because now people are saying that, an elite club would never do that. There's comments coming through the now saying that. Definitely. I don't even think it happened. That job, that magnitude, was offered prior to that day. Never mind in a changing room or in a shower. We can only surmise that when Neil took that job on an interim basis, he was told, by the way, if you win the league and win the Scottish Cup, the job's yours. You're getting a crack at this. You're getting a crack at 9 in a row. Aye. And by the way, yes, up to that point, there were some bad performances. We were there. And the Rangers game, gutted after that. But then, 53 and 58 points. I think someone will correct me if I'm wrong. Brilliant second half to the season, Kevin. We come into this season 10 in a row. Couple of wee issues, obviously, with Lee Griffiths, etc. More than happy with the transfer business. The only player I think that we really, really tried to get was Foster. I'm now wondering why he didn't come up. What was the issue there? We brought in Barkas, expensive goalkeeper who we had scouted previously. So we were happy with the transfer dealings that we had done. But there's something preventing us from going into full flow. At a club like Celtic, and with Neil Lennon, it's almost as if he's on a short leash with the fans and with the media. We know that. Anything goes wrong, there's an issue. There's an internal issue. You know, you've got people like Chris Boyd, Chris Commons, they're all jumping on the bandwagon. There's an internal issue. But you do start wondering it when you look at the nature of that defeat on Saturday, the nature of the performances, the way, the languid way that the club is, the players are going about their business. You know, you can start looking at body language. We're no experts. Christie doesn't celebrate against St Johnstone. All that kind of stuff. You know, you can start looking at that. Players want away. We're always getting leaks coming through on WhatsApp, Kevin. You know, and people are accusing you of having leaked the team because apparently the leaked team's very similar to yours, other than Klamala. Yeti's in for Klamala, so I'll tell you what, I hope that's not the team, because then ACSOM will be getting the blame 2 weeks running. I can confirm Kevin guessed that team, and Sean on YouTube has guessed a different team. Sean's team is a 4-3-3, which is becoming quite fashionable, isn't it? When will 4-4-2 become fashionable again, Kevin? It's so cyclical. Barkas, Frimpong, Ayer, Duffy, Laxalt, McGregor, Brown, Turnbull, Christie, Ayeti, El Yunusi. I'd be surprised with El Yunusi. I thought he was very poor on Saturday, Kev.
I would be surprised as well.
What's the story with him? I mean, we were chuffed to bits when he signed again. You know, he's been hit and miss this season, and it was definitely a miss on Saturday.
It's really frustrating me, I say. It's really frustrating. He's got talent, and there is games where he's pulled when he Sarajevo away. No, the team Riga away.
Yeah.
What a finish that was, and he's got the ability. But when he shunned that one on Saturday, rather than just putting his laces through it, he seems to be a bit hot and cold. When he first came up, he was fantastic, and maybe we're looking at that player before his injury, before he got injured on international duty. I think it's a fans thing that we're always looking for stories, because we don't know what's going on behind the scenes.
Pop will eat itself, Kevin. It's something I mentioned at the beginning of the week, the top of the week. You can go right back to Dyla, right? There's mutiny in the camp, senior pros, you know, they're not playing for the manager. And that's years ago, and then it seeps into the Rodgers era.
Then history proved that to be right, because Brendan Rodgers says it when he arrived, and he says it in his book. I was told of all the problems in the dressing room when I got rid of them.
Yeah. But then a new set of problems came under Brendan Rodgers.
Definitely.
You know?
When he's telling players how many pay packets they've got left before the end of their career. And that's the way Brendan operates. That's how he gets his results, which is great. I have says, and people, I reckon there's a book on man management of how Neil Lennon got us across that line to the treble.
Yeah, let's not forget it.
But again, I always had my doubts longer term. And there's always been spells under Neil Lennon where these doubts have crept in. You look, he was half-time at Rugby Park, he was getting a sack if Tony Stokes hadn't pulled him out the fire. And what did he say to the team at half-time at Rugby Park that day? Do you know?
I wasn't in the dressing room.
If you didn't want me to get the sack, you need to pull this round. That's what he told the team. And when they did 3 each, and they did.
Yeah.
Huzzy went in on Monday or Tuesday, whenever they went into this game, and gone, if you didn't want me to get the sack, boys, you're going to need to pull this out the hat. And see the night, if there was 50,000 Celtic fans there the night, I would be sitting here at this precise moment in time on the way to the ground going, it wouldn't surprise me if we get a result tonight. It wouldn't surprise me if we pull something out the bag and get one of the most famous victories, because we're there. And Neil would use his motivation in the fact that there's 50,000 Celtic fans there, and we would drag this team by the hair over the line, but we're not there tonight. So it's going to be extremely difficult for us to get a result tonight because we're not there.
What would you say?
Or the reaction that we want because we're not there.
Because we're a massive element, absolutely, especially on a European night. We know that, Kevin, absolutely agree with you. What would you say to Celtic fans at the moment who are of the viewpoint that Neil Lennon needs to to leave. Because we've heard it on this podcast, not by me. I've yet to say that. I've been critical all week. I've not said that. I think it could be more damaging. Tony, who was in yesterday, brilliant podcast with Tony Haggerty. And Tony said, you know, if it's got to happen, it's got to happen now, because, you know, that there comes a point where you're at the point of no return. But he wasn't advocating any sacking of Neil Lennon. I've got to say that. On Monday, we did have one of our guests saying Lennon out. I've seen it all week on social media. What would you say to fans who are of that frame of mind at the moment?
I'm sitting right on the fence. I understand where both camps are. I can see why it's a massive risk to get rid of him at this precise moment in time. But I can also see why fans are on that side of the fence wanting to get rid of him, wanting Neil to leave at this precise moment in time.
Somebody disagreeing with you, just put a brick through the back window of your car.
The back window there, what I would say, I'm not going to divert from my opinion that I gave you on the 26th of May 2019. I felt the appointment of Neil Lennon was the beginning of the end.
The end of what?
The end of this
domestic domination.
The domestic domination,
right?
And I'm not going to divert for that. That's what I'm. Whether this is the right time to try and salvage what will be, I don't know. It'll be guys with more knowledge, higher intelligence than me that makes that decision. But what I will actually say is whatever they put in next will only be a short-term fix, because whatever happens this season, if we achieve the 10, if we don't achieve the 10, I reckon our club was looking over the edge of a cliff anyway, whatever happened.
I always think, Kevin,
and COVID has actually amplified that.
There's an element that no one planned for. But I always thought that the option to bring Neil Lennon in was obviously part of the original deal when he came in as an interim manager. I then thought that obviously no one's going to argue if you're winning trebles, which he has. Obviously the Scottish Cup's still up for grabs. It's been carried on from last season. But I do think that there was a plan beyond winning the 10, and Celtic thought they could operate as is and it would get us that far. It will get us to 10. They didn't expect Rangers, and I'm allowed to say that, Rangers, the team that beat us on Saturday, to improve as much as they have done and in a shorter period of time under Gerrard, because they were so poor. Everybody knows how poor they were. They're now our challengers. I don't think they expected that. I don't think they expected the players that have come in that transfer window to somehow worsen the team, because they have. The team's worse than it was last season. The players we brought in, we were raving about the transfer window, Kevin. At this moment in time, the team's no better than it was last season. It might be on paper, but I'm not seeing it. So nobody expected that. And I think the board expected Celtic to operate as is, with some investment in the transfer window just closed, and that would get us to the 10. Maybe with one eye on getting into the Champions League group stages, if possible, because we should, with the level of investment that we've made. Yes, the transfers often are done too late in the day. Ferencváros, you know, the situation with COVID, one-off games, everything has contributed to that not being the case. People are saying you're overreacting. People are saying Celtic fans are overreacting. But it's not one result we're looking at. It's the whole state of play this season. It's the mood around the camp. And it is the feeling that we get around people not being happy. There are leaks from Celtic Football Club, and that's a fact. People are leaking information. It's been happening since the transfer targets were leaked. I'm not saying it's the same person, but there are issues at Celtic. So we're now looking at a situation where tonight's game and Sunday's game have become massive. Massive. They would have been big games anyway, Kevin, but they are now massive in the way that Celtic will proceed this season. And I think they're massive in the future of Neil Lennon.
They are. And that's why I'm looking for a performance, a passion tonight. I want something to hang my hat on. I want something to believe in. And I think part of that was taken away on Saturday from a lot of the support, that they've got nothing to believe in anymore. There's one... I'm going to pick you up on one thing that you actually says there, that you didn't expect the custodians of our club to... They'd never planned for Rangers becoming good again.
They
should have
didn't expect them to become challengers.
They should have been planning for that as soon as Gerrard started getting results against Brendan Rodgers. As soon as Gerrard started getting results in Europe, they should have been thinking to themselves, going, wait a minute,
Is that why we've invested as heavily as we have in the transfer window?
Maybe, but they shouldn't have been just going, they're going to be rubbish forevermore. Because if
no rubbish, but they weren't going to win the league.
But the financial realities of Scottish football are this: they've got 45,000 season ticket holders, which means that they're going to be far better than anybody else in Scottish football, bar us. Mm-hmm. And at one point, they're going to get it right, and we've got to think.
Did anybody expect them to get it right this early, Kevin? This is the question.
But they're 2.5 years into Gerrard's reign. It's 2.5 years that, I'm going to say something here, if the league hadn't finished early, if COVID hadn't cut the league off...
Is this going to be controversial, Kevin?
I don't think Gerrard would be in a job at this precise moment in time.
No, absolutely, aye, they were. I mean, that game at Ibrox, and we went up and picked the tickets up. I wonder where that ticket is, actually, because I never got a refund for it. Was it 50 odd quid?
50 quid,
Now that game there, I fully expected us to go in and absolutely dismantle that side at that point.
I think we wouldn't have lost that game going to Ibrox that Saturday or Sunday or whatever it was.
No, I think we would have absolutely annihilated them.
And the break has allowed Rangers to double down on their project, and their project is Gerrard. I was going to call him Ian Beale as well, Michael Beale. They've got the project and they've doubled down, and they've realised that, as I says, I don't think Gerrard would have been in the job if the season had finished. But it is.
Well, he is.
And it's
and
our custodian's point to make sure that we don't, and when I call a custodian, I call Neil Lennon a custodian as well. It's up to them to make sure that we're going to be successful at the end of the year and do not rest on their laurels. There's another football cliche for you. Have they? Is there something up? It looks that way. At this precise, now we've got nothing really to believe in, because last minute winners against St Johnstone are great. You can believe in last minute winners against St Johnstone because you believe in the team. You believed in the mentality of the team. To be completely lack or devoid of any sort of interest, passion, soul, as we were at the weekend, makes it difficult for you to believe in what's actually happening at the football club at this precise moment in time. Mm-hmm. And you just really do focus on you really just do focus on the negatives.
Yeah.
But for me, sitting here, I reckon it would be different if there was 60,000 there on Saturday and 60,000 here the night.
Yeah, I'm sure.
I think it would be completely different.
No, I would agree with you there, Kevin. Going back to your point there, I don't think anybody was of the view that Rangers would never get better. They had to get better because they were absolutely atrocious at one point. And I just don't think that they expected them to be such a serious challenge at this stage of this season.
I think that's very naive. Of people in the charge of the club.
Well, the naivety is shown through. Is that why we have invested heavily in this transfer market?
You've got to say,
in the last window.
You've got to say yes.
Well, how long does it take before these new transfers that come in gel into that side? And this is a big question. You go out, we want a win on Sunday, right? That is priority. The 10 in a row, the league is a priority. But in order to get that win, you need a performance tonight, don't you? You can't have two horrific performances. We can't have a repeat tonight of what we've seen on Saturday and then expect everybody to pick it up for Sunday. These two games are of massive importance to Neil Lennon's future at Celtic.
If we are as lifeless as roadkill tonight, we are in bother. We are in bother.
Here's a question for you, Kevin.
And we can sit here and say, oh, there must be a problem, this. The only people that know what's going on behind the scenes are the people that make the decisions.
Here's a wee question for you.
22 players, the coaching staff, Peter Law.
That should be the case. That should be the case.
That's the only people who should know what's going on behind the scenes.
That should be the case, but there's leaks. That should be the case. No, going back to your point earlier, on one hand, had the league not been curtailed when it was, Gerrard would have got sacked. Therefore, the team had, fallen off the side of a cliff, as they had done. So you're then saying, well, they go from that to becoming title challengers. And it would have been naive of the Celtic custodians not to have seen that coming. Based on last season, Rangers were terrible by the time it was curtailed. So there's been a huge turnaround in terms of them as a unit, and there's been a turnaround in Celtic falling apart as a unit. Now, there's two elements to that. Celtic, when you look at the performances, now people might give me the points total based on this season against last season and against the season before, but the fact is, the only points that I'm interested in is the deficit between top and second.
Let's turn that round. And as you've mentioned, that we've spent heavily in the transfer market and we didn't let anybody go. Why would we do that if we reckoned Rangers would fall off a cliff?
No, I never said that. They fell off a cliff last season.
They fell off a cliff.
And it would have been naive. You said it would have been naive for anyone to believe that they would come out and win the league this season. That was your point.
I would think it would maybe the point I was trying to make was it would be naive to believe that would happen again. That history would repeat itself. That we could sleepwalk, which was the word that was used on Monday, that we could sleepwalk into losing this league.
Asleep at the wheel. So going back to the original point, if we've invested as heavily as we have done to ensure that we win 10 in a row, yet the team doesn't perform, and the root of that is Neil Lennon's admission on the post-match, his fault that the team are not performing, does the manager go?
I'm going to go back
because I think we've got the players,
and I'm not going to. I'm not going to portray any confidences here because there was 50 folk in this meeting when Peter Law says this, and one of the attendees of this meeting went like that, and it was after the EAK Athens game, and they says, why should we be getting beat of EAK Athens when we've got a far greater resource? And the answer from the top table, from the man who seemingly makes the hire and firing decisions, or is the face of these hire and fire decisions, says it's just a temporary performance issue. It's all down to performance. It's not down to the resource. It's down to a temporary performance issue. If he still believes that, then Neil Lennon's jacket is on a shaky nail.
Right. How shaky? The next two games, how pivotal? How pivotal is the next two games?
The next two games are really, really pivotal.
So
but I'm not talking about the result tonight. I'm talking about if we are complete and utterly soulless and lifeless tonight, then you may see a change before Sunday.
That is incredible to hear that. The thing is, well, though, Kevin,
that depends on what's happening behind the scenes.
No, of course it does, but maybe your leak will send that to you via WhatsApp. Stephen quite rightly said, and so did Tony actually, that if a change is made, then it needs to be somebody who can hit the ground running. It seems obvious, but it does need to be somebody like that.
I'll tell you one thing now. If the change is made before Sunday or after Sunday, you're into Martin O'Neill, Roy Keane territory.
Oh, didn't I say Roy Keane?
You're into that territory.
What, as a team? As a management team?
As a management team.
That frightens me.
It frightens me.
Roy Keane.
But
anyway, we shouldn't be talking about new managers.
No, we shouldn't be talking about that. But where are you going to get a long-term solution?
No, but that was the situation we were in when Rodgers left. Going back and the cyclical nature of this.
We're back to another Neil Lennon situation.
Yeah. Hitting the ground running, making sure they get the job done.
Yes.
And that's where we were previously.
And that's where we will be again if there is a change anytime soon.
So we will be live before the game, Kevin. We'll be live after the game. I don't know if you're coming on Sunday. You'll need to confirm that later on. But we can ask you your views on it after the performance. If the viewers want
me here on Sunday, I could be here.
They could be. Yeah, you could be.
But X Factor poll. So if somebody gives me, Britain's Got Talent, somebody give me a golden buzzer, I could be here.
So we could put the names of everybody who's appeared this week on a vote, and we'll see who they want for Sunday. That sounds fair. I'm definitely
not coming back on Sunday.
That sounds fair. Now, Kevin, as always, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. It's the first of 4 broadcasts that we'll be doing tonight. We've got a special guest who's coming along for his debut for the match day as well. We'll be half an hour before kick-off. And we've given our predicted lineups, no leaks in the camp. Remember that advert where somebody called the plumber because there was a leak and there was a guy dressed as a leak? Aye. It was only a matter of time before that happens on ACSOM as well.
I came dressed in a leak. So
aye, I know. Aye, because we were getting accused of that.
Mr. Trick there, Paul.
Absolutely right. So thanks everybody for getting involved on Twitter, Facebook and YouTube. If you haven't done so already, please subscribe on YouTube. You can come back for round 2 between Kevin and I half an hour before kick-off, and all that's left for me to say is, Kevin, Graham, once again, thanks for joining me on A Celtic State of Mind, sir.
Thanks very much.